Hey everyone, and welcome to the College Chats podcast. As we record this, it is Thanksgiving, and we are very grateful that our guest has taken time away from scoffing turkey and pumpkin pie to speak with us about what might be the greatest Group of Five season in living memory. But first, we are the chaps. I'm George, and on this day of giving thanks, I am thankful to be joined by the rootinest, tootinest college football compatriot this side of the Rio Grande. Yep, I am joined by the Sundance Kid who has been eagerly awaiting this episode for months now. Oliver, how are you, my friend?
I'm great. I'm great. I can't believe we're here on Thanksgiving discussing the final weekend of the college football regular season now. It's just like how quickly has it come around, and just what an incredible season. It's just, as always, it's gone too fast. And but yeah, you're right. I am very much looking forward to this episode. We're right in my ballpark. What I absolutely love about college football with our guest tonight. So I'm very excited about it.
Well, I too am looking forward to this episode because after the introduction, I can just sit back and let the two of you just chat about all the football that's going on. But before we do that, let me introduce our guest, no stranger to this podcast, made previous appearances as a Georgia football insider with his Saturday in Athens podcast. However, returns to us with a new show called Preferred Walk On, covering all of college football, both FBS and FCS. It is also rumoured that you never see our guest and Tony Vitello in the same place at the same time. So it's difficult to know if we're joined by the San Francisco Giants head coach or Seth Saunders. I'm sure it's Seth. Hi, Seth. Happy Thanksgiving. How are you?
George, Ollie, it's great to see y'all. Great to be with you. Happy Thanksgiving to y'all. I mean, George, that is undoubtedly my favorite introduction of all time. I think I'm just going to bring you with me everywhere I go now.
I've been waiting for some time because, particularly, I mean, you saw when he was doing well with the Vols, I'm like, that's Seth. I mean, he's like his doppelganger. But then we never had you on, and then I spoke to you when I was in Baton Rouge, and it never came up. So, um, I definitely think you could be a stand-in if he's not available. Right, time is limited because you're going to go and run and eat some turkey after this. We are here to talk about Group of Five, but given it's Thanksgiving and this is a Thanksgiving special, I think we'll kick it off by really what we're all thankful for from this outstanding college football season. So, Seth, kick us off. You are in the land of Thanksgiving. What's been so special for you this year with the season that we've just seen?
Yeah, it's just been incredible, boys. I mean, I just feel like the parity across the sport has been as good as it's ever been. And as many warts as the transfer portal and NIL may have, this is the blessing of it, right? Is that every weekend there seems to be a different storyline, something compelling. There are teams involved that we're not used to being involved, Texas Tech being one of them, and so many others across the landscape. What Indiana has done this year in Kurt Cignetti's second year, just been so many outstanding storylines. And we're going to talk about it today a bunch, but I think the Group of Five race all throughout those conferences has been as interesting as any of them. And so it's been a ton of fun. And I'll tell you guys one other thing I'm thankful for. And I know y'all will probably echo this, but because of what we all do, covering the sport and having shows and doing all these things, man, the people we get to meet and the people you get to become friends with, it's just the best blessing, man. And it's made me fall more in love with the sport. And here's the thing, outside of college football, I'm not sitting here with the two of you today. And so I just love that about it. I love the relationships and the fellowship. And I think that's what's so beautiful about it and why people have such passion about it. So yeah, man, it's been an incredible year.
Yeah, I think we all like echo that. It is an amazing sport, and it's opened up so many different doors and relationships for us. It's quite amazing. Ollie, um, hard to talk what Seth's come away with, but I'm sure you've got some nuggets.
Yeah, 100%. I would echo exactly what Seth said there about the community of college football and what a great experience it is to be in and around the game. You know, I was in Dublin for Iowa State, Kansas State earlier this year, and that game and the fans that came over, I don't think there's been a game on this side of the pond where what makes college football so special has been so on display on this
Mm-hmm.
side of the pond. Like we've had games here, we've had large attendances, but Iowa State, Kansas State brought great numbers of fans, and that community element of it was great to see firsthand. And then I think storylines, like fairy tale storylines, this college football season has delivered.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're going to talk about several of them across the group of five, but also like a national level. Like I know it started last year, but Diego Pavia at Vanderbilt, and what a fairy tale storyline that has been like for that program. And a guy like Trinidad Chambliss at Ole Miss coming from D2 Ferris State to leading the Ole Miss Rebels to the verge of the college football playoff. Like I've been writing today several pieces looking at college football from 1 to 136 from quarterbacks, offense, and stuff, and just everywhere you look, there feels like there's just an incredible storyline. And I think whenever you're covering the sport, like you can't help but be thankful for those storylines coming to the fore to just like to be able to tell those stories, being in and around those stories, those things, it's just incredible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think Dublin game was a really good example. I didn't make it this year, but from it, what everyone said that came back, they said the atmosphere was truly outstanding. And I think a lot of that was the fans that came across from the US, but they brought more of the passion of the game that we're used to when we see it over there. And obviously with the Union Jack Classic being in London next year, that's the challenge they've got, right? We're obviously looking forward to Seth coming across to see the Jayhawks play the Sun Devils, but the challenge there is how do you replicate that atmosphere that we see in the stadiums in the US in an international location. I actually didn't think there was as many shock results this season. Remember last year, it seemed like there was a shock result every 2 minutes in college football. I didn't think there
Mm-hmm.
was quite as many, but what I do think is to Seth's point, the quality of football has been exceptional. So you really do see that evening of the playing field, which is then reflected to a degree in the rankings. And then just to touch on what Ollie said, it was outstanding to see some of the maybe the subplot headlines. To be in that locker room and hear Brian Kelly ranting about his team. Right at the time, I didn't realize that was the beginning of the end for Brian Kelly, and
Yeah.
then the whole Lane Kiffin scenario. So I think for me, some of the kind of subplots which effectively have taken over the headlines of college football have been quite incredible. It's stuff that you just wouldn't see in the NFL. So yeah, you're right, guys. We have a lot to be thankful for. It's been an incredible season, that's for sure.
One incredible season storyline, which is going to come to an end or come to fruition, should I say, over the next 3 days, is the race for the college football playoff that centers around the race for the American Conference Championship.
Yeah.
Steph, you're deep in Group of Five waters, and this episode is going to be completely dedicated to that, which is absolutely I'm buzzing for. I want to start with the American because it is obviously so prominent in the conversation nationally right now, and one of
Mm-hmm.
the biggest storylines. Obviously, Eric Morris will leave North Texas at the end of the season to go to Oklahoma State. There are teams still in the race for the Americans, still in the race for the college football playoff. How do you see that situation impacting the Mean Green this weekend? Is there an open door for Navy? We've touched on Navy playing tonight before we hit record. They're still in the race too. Like, will that situation with Coach Morris impact what we see from the Mean Green this weekend?
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch as things play out because you'd have to think in some way it does, right? And here's the thing I do, though, think about Coach Morris, and that's he seems, and I'm going to steal a Kirby Smart saying here, but he seems to keep the main thing the main thing. And I'm sure he did a nice job communicating the plan and what was going to happen with his roster and his players. And I think that's a big piece of it, right? Is saying, hey, look, I'm not trying to go behind closed doors or anything like this. I'm going to be transparent and this is what we're doing. And I need y'all to know that while this season is still going, I'm 10 toes down here in Denton. And we're going to finish out our year and try to make this as magical as we can be. Because, look, the Temple team doesn't have a great record, right? But that's no pushover. Coach Keeler does a great job with them. They took Navy to the wire. Really should have won that football game, outside of Blake Horvath's magic at the end of that ball game. And so that's a tough matchup for them. And then what you hope if you're them is you win, you go to the title game, and then you're going to face off either against Tulane, which I think is probably most likely, or Navy if some things go wrong. And then you got a chance to dance your way into the college football playoff, because I do think now the American sits in the driver's seat for the CFP spot. And so you have a ton to play for. And gosh, of all places, North Texas to be in that mix, given what their recent history had been before Coach Morris, it's incredible. And this Drew Mestamaker story, I think, is one of, if not the best player stories in college football. And then you add into all that Coach Morris's legacy from procuring and training quarterbacks. It's unreal. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch. And I cannot wait to sit down tonight and watch the midshipmen face off against the Tigers.
I just know Ollie's just bursting to talk about this for the rest of the half hour. We thought we'd bounce about the conferences, right? Not just spend our time on one. So let's talk a little bit about the Sun Belt, the Fun Belt, and it would be remiss of me not to talk about Mississippi at some point during a podcast. Southern Miss Golden Eagles have had a transformative year, right?
Yeah.
It has been quite. It's difficult to say, what were they 1-11 last year, and they've already bowl eligible this year, first time since 2022, under Charles Huff, and he's really his first year there. This has been quite the turnaround for the Golden Eagles. What do you think's been the key to that, Seth?
Look, boys, I think it starts and ends with Coach Huff, right? I mean, you look at the success that he had at Marshall. He comes in at Southern Miss and he goes 80 new players on this roster, 17 of whom he brought from the Thundering Herd. That defense has been really good all year, leading the Sun Belt in sacks and interceptions, and they control their own destiny. They beat Troy, and they're going to Harrisonburg to play the Dukes in a huge matchup. And let me just tell you this, I'm a little biased for Coach Huff, boys, because he was a walk-on in college, which I have so much affection for. And he played at Hampton University, which is right down the road from where I went to school at William & Mary. And while he was there in 2004, William & Mary and Hampton played in the FCS playoffs. And William & Mary's who ended their season. But I tell you all that to tell you this. They had this kid on Hampton's roster with Coach Huff named Jerome Mathis, who was outstanding, ended up playing in the league. But that day against the Tribe, he had 400 all-purpose yards and 3 touchdowns. So, yeah, I have an affinity for Coach Huff. And look, coach with Coach Saban, okay? And so I think the pedigree there is outstanding. And what he's done and what he's built, he's just a winner. And I have been surprised, and I'm interested what y'all think. Doesn't it fascinate you that he hasn't been a more prominent name bandied about as it pertains to some of these jobs, given his recruiting prowess, given his success at roster building? I just thought he would be a much more popular name.
Yeah, I think it was interesting how the whole end of his tenure at Marshall came about as well. Like that situation never made any sense to me. Like it was very clear to anyone on the outside looking in what a great coach, great recruiter he is, and why that situation unfolded with Marshall. Like that never made any sense. And so, yeah, to your point, like in this firing cycle that we have right now, where there are so many vacancies and it doesn't feel like enough good coaches to fill them, like why hasn't his name come up in those conversations? I'm sure Southern Miss fans are absolutely thrilled that it hasn't, but like it doesn't make a ton of sense to me.
Isn't it? Doesn't it feel like though there are some coaches that there just seems to be this list, and it's the same coaches that seem to be on this list. I'm not saying it's lazy because it clearly isn't, but there's just some coaches that don't seem to be the current cool pick, if you like. And it probably takes a season like this at Southern Miss, and hopefully he gets more seasons to take them even further, right? Because this would be for them to win the conference championship, this would be a history-making season for Southern Miss. They've never won the Sun Belt before. And I guess that's what propels you into these discussions about, other jobs. That's kind of how it works, isn't it? But to your point about walk on, Seth, I listened to Brent Venables talk last week about working hard for everything that he's got, and he instills that work ethic, and he recruits on that basis.
Mm-hmm.
To get a team that's hungry for, and I guess maybe he was taking a little bit of a shot perhaps at some of the recruiting that goes on. But to your point, Coach Huff, has got that chip on his shoulder. He's driving his team forward, and dare I say it, that's the kind of work ethic that he puts into his team. And in many ways, that explains why you go from a massive change on the roster and a wholly losing season last year to turning it around this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think that has to play a part in it, right? Is that he had to fight for everything. And you go back to his college journey, he starts as a walk-on fullback and he ends his career at Hampton as the starting center, and he's a captain. And so nobody knows that journey of what it takes more than he does. And I think probably too, wouldn't you think if you were a walk-on, and in some way, all walk-ons feel like they were overlooked in some way and should have gotten more attention, more offers. And so I'm sure it gives you a different lens to look through when you go to evaluate talent, because you go, look, man, there's somebody just like me out there that somebody is missing on. And if we can go grab them and foster them and make them into the best that they can be, it's an easy way for us to roster build and have guys that are loyal to us because we believed in them when nobody else did. And so, yeah, I think that's absolutely key into his success and his journey.
We'll come back to the Sun Belt a little bit later because there is one big pressing matter where the Sun Belt's concerned and one of the teams at the top of the Sun Belt. But it wouldn't be a podcast where we talk about a group of five and I'm involved where we don't go into midweek action. Because it's arguably the greatest brand in the entire world, let alone in college sports. We saw Western Michigan book their space in Detroit on Tuesday night, but there's still a whole world of scenarios for the teams that could face them in that MAC championship game. Who's your pick to take on Western Michigan in Detroit?
Oh man, this is tough. And it has been crazy, right? I think I had seen at the beginning of the week as I was kind of looking into how it could all play out. And I think as of Monday, before the Tuesday games, there were 8 teams that theoretically were still in the mix for one of those 2 slots. And Western Michigan took some of the drama out of that by taking care of their own business and winning their ball game. And I think, look, at the top, you've got to look at Miami of Ohio and Toledo because in a lot of ways, they control the most of their destiny, with Toledo having the most, right? If they go in and win, they're going to be at Ford Field playing Western Michigan. And so that's a nice path. Miami of Ohio needs a little bit of help, but they have as much of a direct path as any. And then you got Ohio and Central Michigan out here as 2 players going, well, if certain things happen, it could all play out for us too. And so, gosh, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch it unfold. I mean, I think, I probably would lean Toledo if I was picking, just because I think when you have a stake where you're completely in control, I think from a coaching perspective, it's real easy to sell that narrative. Hey, look, boys, we don't have to fool with anything else. We're going to control our controllables, and we're going to take ourselves to Detroit. Whereas with Miami of Ohio, yeah, you can control all your controllables and it's still not work out. And so that's tough, right? And so I think Toledo certainly has the inside track, and that's who you'd have to have your eye on. Either way, the conference all year long has been so much parity and so much high drama. So I think this weekend will be no different, trying to see what the denouement of all of it will be.
I love the fact that Toledo and Central Michigan play each other as well this weekend. Like that's, and it feels like is the case every season, every week of every season with the MAC. It's like 2 of the top teams are playing each other week in, week out, because as one result goes one way, another team gets elevated back into contention, and it's just the greatest, right? Like we're talking about Thanksgiving and what we're thankful for. Anyone who isn't thankful for sitting down on a Tuesday evening and watching the MAC is out of their damn minds.
I couldn't agree more with that.
I do often think about Ollie sitting at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock on a Wednesday morning watching Maction and wonder how many people in the UK are actually doing it. But we know at least one. Seth, we know that you're not sitting in the peach state right this second, but your heart is in the peach state. Let's talk a little bit about Kennesaw State and the season that they have had. They play Liberty on Saturday with a chance of locking in a spot at the Conference USA Championship game. What do you make of the season that they've had this year?
Yeah, really cool, man. I think the Kennesaw State program story is cool in and of itself. You're talking about a university that didn't even start playing football till 2015, starts at the FCS level, then builds their way up, and then transitions to Conference USA. I think Coach Mack has done an excellent job. And look, the Owls story for 2025, I think you can't even have a conversation about it without talking about Amari Odom. And Wofford transfer, what a great roster add, and he has been absolutely electric for them. Davey O'Brien, award winner last week. I mean, just doing everything for the Owls, and I think he's getting better each week. And interesting thing about him, he oozes athleticism because his mama and daddy were both not just college athletes at Cal, they were both professional athletes. His daddy had a cup of coffee in the NFL, and his mama played in the WNBA. So he's got all the tools, man. And he's a young kid, redshirt sophomore. I just think a lot of growth room there for him too. And so as long as he can keep things going, wants to hit Gabriel Vignard, his favorite target, I just think they have a really compelling story. And then you flip that around, who they might play, Jacksonville State or Western Kentucky, also really interesting stories. And so, man, Conference USA has been a ton of fun too. But yeah, I love this Owls team. I love the story of their program, and I love the success that they've had this season.
A really tough spot for Coach Mack as well, because obviously there were so many people in and around that program who were so invested in Coach Bohannon before. And there was so much outcry when he left. You kind of felt like this program was almost going to be on a downward trajectory, and then all of a sudden this season, Coach Mack's has done such a great job there. Excuse me, for the Owls. The Mountain West. Speaking of great jobs, there's been several great jobs in the Mountain West. Sean Lewis at San Diego State. Is obviously the highlight, I think, for a lot of people who follow the Mountain West. Two-part question. Talk to me a little bit about what your thoughts on the jobs Sean Lewis has done at San Diego State. Also, what the hell happened to Boise State this year?
Yeah, man, the Mountain West has been fascinating all season. Sean Lewis done an incredible job. Look, did a great job at Kent State. I always thought the tenure at Colorado was a funny one, right? Because Sean Lewis has had success and done a great job everywhere he's been. And for that not to end well, I'd love to hear the other side of that story and kind of see what actually happened there. But yeah, I mean, Coach Lewis has put himself squarely in the conversation for a number of job openings. I would be surprised if he's not involved in a lot of the job openings, especially within that California system. But yeah, and here's the shocking thing too, I think, about that San Diego State squad. Sean Lewis, offensive guy, they hang their hat on their defense. I mean, that defense has been as stingy as any defense in America outside of the aberration when they play Hawaii, and Hawaii puts up 30 plus on them. They've been almost impossible to score on. And so they've been awesome. And then their opponent this week, you look at what Coach Eck has done at New Mexico. What a turnaround for that program and the Lobos, with they're squarely in the conference title game mix. And then that doesn't even account for kind of the up and down and Dan Mullen at UNLV and that whole story. And so it's just been, gosh, so many things. It's been really awesome. And then, you mentioned Boise State. Here's the interesting part about them. As weird as their year has been, they still have an angle where they could play in the conference title game if certain things happen, which is crazy given that they certainly haven't been the Boise State we've come to expect, right? And maybe we should have anticipated that a little bit. I mean, you lose a generational player in Ashton Genty, and you have to figure there's going to be some drop off, but they just haven't looked like the Broncos squad that we've grown accustomed to. So Yeah, this is another one where so much drama, so many things that are going to unfold this weekend, and yeah, I can't wait to watch it.
From Boise State, who inhabited the one of the 5 automatic bid spots. I'm not going to call it the group of 5 playoff spot because that doesn't exist. It's one of the top 5 highest ranked auto bids. From Boise State, who was in there last year, to who could be there this year. Now we know we've talked about the American and Tulane and whether, if North Texas wins the American, they could be the shoe in there.
Mm-hmm.
James Madison University has arguably done the best job of any group of 5 team out there. Doesn't seem to be receiving that national recognition, particularly from the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, who very clearly stamped their ACC authority all over the top 25 rankings this last week. What more does JMU need to do in the next? We've got the regular season finale this weekend and then the Sun Belt Championship game. Like, what more does this team need to do to be nationally recognized? Because their head coach is being discussed for the biggest of the available jobs. Like Bob Chesney's being linked with Penn State left, right, and center. JMU isn't getting that national recognition. Seth, what more do these guys need to do?
Yeah, I think JMU is in a really tough spot, Ollie, and I'll tell you why. Because here's the thing. What's easy to say is, well, they should have scheduled differently, right? They had Louisville in the schedule, and you're kind of in some – and played Louisville great. That ball game was tied going into the fourth quarter on the road. And I think it's one of those things where if Louisville had had a better year as it had played out and say Louisville's in the conversation to win the ACC title, I think maybe that gives JMU a little bit more of a push. But here's the flip side of that, okay? I think their program is at a level where if I'm a P4, do I really want them on my schedule? Because they could legitimately come in here, and this isn't a true buy game. They could come in here and upend the apple cart for us. So I don't know that I really want Coach Chesney and the Dukes on our schedule. And I think it would have been that way when Coach Signetti was there. I mean, JMU has done a phenomenal job. And I'm biased on this for many reasons, boys. My co-host James went to James Madison. I'm from Virginia. I've spent time in Harrisonburg. If y'all have not gotten the opportunity to go, and you ever do, you must go to that campus. You must go to a game at Bridgeforth. It is outstanding. And I think they're doing a good job of funding so that they can get in the facilities arms race. They recruit very well. And I was having this conversation with somebody talking about the James Franklin hire at Virginia Tech. And they were like, oh, I think Coach Franklin can turn it around. And I'm like, look, man, I think the ship may have already sailed on this. Like, JMU is the best football program in the Commonwealth of Virginia right now. I will stand all the way down and say that. They're outstanding. They have great alumni support. The on-campus environment for games is outstanding. They recruit really, really well. Think about this. Half that roster at Indiana that Coach Signetti took and has taken the folks in Bloomington to heights, that's JMU kids. And so, yeah, man, I don't know is the short answer. I don't know what else they can do. They've taken care of all of their business in conference. Obviously, still some steps to go. They got to come down to Conway and play Coastal this weekend, and then they'll host the game for the title game. And so I still think a couple data points for them to show. But if you're a JMU follower or you're a part of that program, you're kind of rooting for a little bit of chaos in the American, right? Because you want to get that slot. But, yeah, I think they deserve more credit. I certainly do. I mean, Coach Chesney was excellent at Holy Cross before he got to James Madison. I don't know what else they could have done. I have been on the rooftop saying that somebody say James Madison's name. Like, they're a very, very good football team.
We've heard a lot over the last 2 weeks about the impact of the noise around Kiffin's job on the Ole Miss team. But just when you guys were talking about that, you're talking about Coach Chesney. I'm thinking about John Sumrall, whose name has been linked with every job going, right? It must have been, or maybe I'm going to ask this question to both of you. How difficult do you think it's been to keep the focus of these teams who have performed exceptionally well? I mean, Tulane have had another fantastic season. With all that noise going on, surely that must be almost an impossible job.
Yeah. I mean, think about Memphis too, right? They're in the same boat. That their head coach being bandied about for a bunch of different gigs. And so you're thinking about a lot of different things there, especially if you're the kids on that roster, because you're going, is my guy going to be here? Am I going to be one of the guys that goes with him? All these different things. And so I think it's a different dynamic where again, just like I said about Coach Morris, I think those guys have to be very, very transparent with their roster and just be very open about, hey, look, these are the things that are going on, and I'm here and I'm committed, and we're going to do everything we can to stay the course. But to your point, George, I think it has to be a distraction in some way, right? Especially as it's happening as early as the coaching carousel started this year. I just think it's been such a different dynamic on that side of the coin. And so, yeah, man, it's going to be fascinating because both those guys are Arkansas is in the mix. Auburn's in the mix. LSU backup is in the, all these things. It's just, it's so many variables in play as it comes to these guys. And I'll be frank with you. I thought Oklahoma State pulled the greatest just switcheroo possible, right? They go out early in this market and attack Coach Morris. I had told multiple people, if I was the folks in charge at Auburn, I would have been on the phone with Coach Morris as early as possible. They've had problems at the quarterback position. You figure Drew Mestamaker probably going to go with him. Like, gosh, man, I thought he would have been a knockout hire for the Tigers. But yeah, good on the Pokes. I love that hire.
The coaching carousel is a whole other podcast episode that we're going into, because that has been, as you say, the timing has been outrageous this year. It's nearly turkey time. I hope there's some turkey left by the time you get there, Seth. Before you go, I think we were counting 23 different rivalry games on the schedule this weekend. We do a segment in the other podcast called Tickets Under 20, where we map out fictional trips to games that we'd like to go to based on the cost. But given this is Thanksgiving, there's no cap on the cost. There's no cap on the travel. This is Ollie's dream scenario. Which one of the rivalry games would you end up at this weekend if we handed you a couple of tickets right this second?
Oh, boys. So last Thanksgiving, actually, my co-host and I on Thanksgiving Day flew to Madison, did Paul Bunyan's Axe on Black Friday, which was 11 a.m. local kick. It was 9 degrees. So watched Minnesota, Wisconsin at Camp Randall, did the post-game press conference, got in the rental car, drove straight from Madison, Wisconsin down to Bloomington, Indiana for Old Oak and Bucket, and caught Purdue, Indiana Saturday night in the snow. It was awesome. And so this premise, I am very, very much all bought in, boys. So this is what I would do, I think. There are some awesome rivalries that I don't think get enough credit. I will put Paul Bunyan's Axe on that list, especially in a year like this where Wisconsin's been bad, which hurts my heart. Minnesota hasn't been what I thought they would become under PJ Fleck. I love PJ Fleck. Row the boat. I'm all on that, okay? So that's one I'd put on the list. Maybe the greatest rivalry trophy at the FBS level. I mean, that Axe is massive. It's awesome. So that's one I'd put in there. Here's another one. Let's go Territorial Cup. Arizona State. They've been playing that ball game since 1899. That's 13 years before Arizona was even a state. They've been playing that game. So I think that one would be a ton of fun. Here's another one. Oregon, Washington. And I would want to do it at both venues. I think I haven't been to either. They're both on my list. But I do think I might want to start at Husky Stadium and start the day in Husky Harbor on a boat, having a cold beverage or two. I think that would be an excellent start. And then, George, you'll identify with this one. I think it'd be disingenuous to mention this conversation and not put the Iron Bowl in there, right? Like, I just think that's got to be one of the better, more heated rivalries across the country. And then just because I haven't been to either stadium, I'd love to go to the game. I mean, and if we had a private jet, we could maybe maneuver a lot of these in one weekend if the timing worked out. So if we all want to pull together and figure this out, I'm in, fellas.
The concept of the private jet has been brought up before by other guests, and I think our sponsors are having some sort of coronary episode at the thought of that. Ollie, I'm loath to give you this question when there's so little time left on the podcast, but Seth's roundup was pretty comprehensive, but I'm sure you've got some out of the ordinary games that you want to go to.
I was like looking up to see whether it'd be physically possible to do the Egg Bowl and clean old-fashioned hate, which it would not be, not even slightly close to being physically and humanely possible. But like both those, where rivalry games go, both of those rivalries are top tier in my mind as far as college football rivalries are concerned. And what a great game clean old-fashioned hate was last year.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at it, how many of those Black Friday rivalry games like actually mean something this year as well? So Georgia Tech means something. Texas A&M Texas means something. Arizona State means something. And I'm really glad that you brought up that West Coast or westerly rivalry between Arizona and Arizona State, because I think it was a rivalry game that no one talks about anywhere near enough. And that's on Saturday at 2 a.m. UK time. And that's UNLV against Nevada. That rivalry is like so bitter, like so nasty. No one ever talks about it because Nevada is a really bad football program, and UNLV historically has been a bad football program. But like, there's just vitriol in that rivalry, and I think in a rivalry game, that's what you want. Like, it doesn't need to be two teams who are at the top of their conference, although obviously UNLV are pretty close to the top in this situation, but it doesn't have to be the college football playoff on the line. It doesn't have to be winning a conference on the line. That's the pure essence of college football, right? Like, we started the show talking about it. And I think UNLV and Nevada, that rivalry really like encapsulates that. So I'd get myself down to Reno at late night, Saturday night. Why not?
Private jet's going to be working overtime. There's going to be a lot of excise fuel duties on that. I love the fact that the two games that we've talked about, the Iron Bowl and the Egg Bowl, are getting played at Starkville and at Jordan-Hare, because I just think that adds a whole different element to the game. And I think both Ole Miss and Alabama, who are probably slight favourites in those games, are in. You imagine going to a full Starkville with those cowbells ringing, and Ole Miss. I know Ole Miss could probably afford the defeat in terms of the college football playoff, although the way the ranking committee's thinking, we're not very sure these days. Alabama certainly cannot afford a defeat there. And I wrote a piece this week about the ghosts of Jordan-Hare because everyone thinks it's haunted now, right? But so that's going to be a really interesting game. The other one, the Texas A&M game, that is off the charts because last year we were hoping it was going to come down to a final day decider in that game, and of course Texas A&M fell. Their form fell off a cliff. This year it hasn't, and Texas has to win this game. So is Texas A&M, but for entirely different reasons. The Aggies need to win it to get into the SEC Championship that they've never got to before. Texas, if they want to resurrect their playoff hopes, need to do that. And finally, what I think could be a sneaky good game is the Tennessee rivalry game, which isn't really a rivalry, but it's an in-state game where Vanderbilt, I think Ollie talked about Diego Pavia. Pavia could have his Heisman moment, right?
Yeah.
So going to be pretty interesting. It is a phenomenal last week of college football, so I hope we all enjoy it as much as we can. Seth, we've held you far too long. I am so impressed by the quality of your Wi-Fi that you're sitting outside. Tell our, because I talked about preferred walk-on at your introduction, tell our viewers and our listeners what you're doing, where they can find you, and what you're up to that we can watch out for coming up.
Yeah, well, first off, guys, thank y'all so much for having me. It's always a delight to come on and get to spend time with y'all. It's always great, and y'all always have such awesome content and awesome guests. So I'm just more than honored to be included in that. So thank y'all for having me on to spend time with you. Yeah, we're like George mentioned earlier, we were a Georgia centered podcast for a long time. We were Saturday in Athens, and to be frank, my co-host and I just fell more and more in love with college football as a whole and wanted to be able to tell more stories and have a vantage point for that. And so we shifted to preferred walk-on. When I was a college athlete, I was a preferred walk-on, so it felt like it was fitting. And those are some of the stories that we wanted to tell. And so my co-host and I both went to FCS schools, so we've also been covering that and have had FCS coaches on this year. It's been awesome having them share their stories, and so that's kind of where the push is going to go, is to try and tell some more stories of the characters that are involved in the game that we love, because for us, that's really what it's become all about. And so the big thing, man, is if you want to follow us on YouTube and subscribe to the program there, we would love that. If you just want to follow on social media and follow our content there, we'd love that too. Any support at all is welcome. So yeah, man, well, I'm so grateful to be here with you guys.
So it's been a pleasure, and as you said at the opening of the show, it's great to make friends through this podcast. And that first time we met, which was that Nashville we met in, or was that Dallas? I
Yeah,
think it was Nashville, wasn't it? Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah. 2023 media days.
yeah, here we are. Here we are 2 or 3 years later. That's all from us on this episode. Thanks to Seth and Ollie for their expertise. Thanks to you for listening and continuing to support us. Stay safe and well, and catch you all next time.